It's been less than a month since Democrats took control of the House, and they're wasting no time exercising the power that comes with a new majority status, with no shortage of sticking it to Donald Trump. Today, the president's former fixer, Micheal Cohen, is on Capitol Hill for his third day in front of legislative committees after yesterday's fiery testimony, much of it directed at his old boss.
Since taking office, he has become the worst version of himself. He is a racist. He is a con man, and he is a cheat.
And in the midst of yesterday's blockbuster hearing, which Republicans refused to hold when they were in the majority, House Democrats took a break to vote and pass the first new gun control legislation in 25 years.
It's about common sense background checks, which 90% of the American people support. We will, again, make the American people safer.
The bill requires background checks on all gun sales, including private ones, those made at gun shows and over the internet. And while it still faces an uncertain future in the Senate, it would never even have come to a vote in the House under GOP control. Then today they passed another bill to extend the length of FBI background checks for all gun purchases from 3 to 10 days. It closes the so-called Charleston loophole after the 2015 mass murder in an historically black South Carolina church. And that was all just this week. Of course, there's been the battle over the border wall. Last week, as you recall, the House voted to overturn Trump's national emergency declaration to free up money for the border wall. Between the hearings and the high-profile votes, there's certainly no shortage of political theater, but what's the real-world impact of this blue wave? Joining me are Jennifer Nassour, former chair of the Massachusetts Republican Party, now COO of Reflect Us, this bipartisan, female-focused political organization. Hey there, nice to see you. Former Boston City Councilor, we haven't seen him in a bit. Michael Ross, he's now a partner with Prince Lobel. Michael, it's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So what the House has done, Jennifer, is clearly represents change, but with a Republican Senate and a Republican president, does it represent more than that? Is it the beginning of action, or is it just symbolism?
I think it's symbolism. I think that the House knows that if they want to retain their seats in 2020, that they're going to have to show some action, because if they just go and they talk about impeachment and they do nothing else, then all of the newly elected officials who are elected from those suburban, typically Republican districts will lose their seats.
Do you buy this notion that it's purely symbolism?
I mean, they're passing legislation, first time in 25 years. It's the House, they need the Senate, but to me that's not symbolic. And, you know, I think the House has been not only doing actual work, but they've also been bipartisan. They haven't been doing it just with Democrats. They've had Republican votes on these, you know, the gun legislation.
Well, they had 8 on the first gun bill and 3 Republicans on the next. And it's not exactly bipartisan. It's not only one party.
I mean, when you get when you get Republicans voting, I mean, that starts to count.
You know, but I want to challenge. Also, I think I'd side with him, maybe for a different reason. It requires, one of the things that Paul Ryan did, which good leaders, and I use that in quotes, are supposed to do, always protect your members from a vote that may put them in trouble back home. Nancy Pelosi's right. 90% of Americans, including an overwhelming percentage of the NRA, support background checks. The good news under Ryan, you never had a vote. So you could basically dance at home. Now these Republicans are on record as voting against something that the vast majority of Americans and assumedly their constituents support. So that does have some impact, even if the gun legislation itself doesn't become law, no?
Not really, because I think if they were going to get wiped out, they would have gotten wiped out in 2018. It wouldn't be 2020 when they have a president running, an incumbent president running in 2020. I don't think that these members are concerned.
15 Republicans with A ratings from the NRA lost in the midterms to 15 Democrats with F ratings from the NRA.
Right, which is what I'm saying. So at this point, if you were going to lose, you would have lost already. The ones that are there, I think, are in pretty solid Republican seats.
How about the Cohen thing? I mean, we talked last night about the hearing, whether that will mean anything beyond a huge show for the American people yesterday, with the exception of that Representative Amash from Michigan, who actually asked a couple of neutral questions, a Republican from Michigan, sort of more libertarian-leaning kind of guy. Not one Republican broke ranks. Every single one for them, as Micheal Cohen said to them, I can't believe none of you have asked me a question about President Trump. Did that achieve anything other than sort of more of the same vis-a-vis the President of the United States?
I mean, it set the tone for maybe some additional hearings. The new city the new congressman.
She used to be your colleague, Ayanna Pressley. No?
Ayanna Pressley is on that committee, as is Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez. Both asked questions that were setting a stage for future hearings, perhaps around tax fraud or other frauds that may have been committed. So I don't think this goes away. Regardless of the Republicans sitting on their hands.
Well, isn't that true, by the way? I mean, particularly the question, Ayanna Pressley's question, particularly about race, we're going to get to that in a second, I think was pretty dramatic. Ocasio-Cortez was almost like a prosecuting attorney on the tax stuff, opening the door, I would argue, to subpoenaing members of the Trump organization, maybe subpoenaing the kids, the Trump kids, and getting the tax return. So that is an advance. That's not just symbolism, is it, or is it?
No, I mean, but this is what they've been waiting for the past 2 years also, is an opportunity to take some shots at the president and to find an opening to take those shots. And so yesterday was a perfect opportunity. And, you know, if this was the other way around and it was a Democratic president and Republicans, I would have expected them to do the same thing.
But doesn't it, but the reason I brought it up, though, was, I don't disagree with what you just said, but it is more than symbolism. I mean, not only do they lay the foundation for the walls closing more around certain people in the administration potentially, but also they further educate the American people about the comings and goings of Donald Trump. No?
So the difference is the gun legislation, which they know is not going to get passed. It's not going to pass the Senate, and it would definitely be vetoed by the president. This is a different story. This is a hearing. This is televised. This is an opportunity for some grandstanding also, and for those new freshmen members of Congress to make a showing and to make a statement and to show that they actually have some political chops.
Do you worry at all that Democrats are overplaying their hand? I mean, one of the reasons they've been so careful around the impeachment issue, it's pretty clear, is they're anxious. I don't want to speak for all of them, obviously. I don't speak for any of them. But it's pretty clear that with the exception of some of the new young members, they're trying to stay away from it so they don't upset those who are not ardent Democrats. If they have hearing after hearing after hearing, vote after vote, much of which is directed at Donald Trump, is there potential there's some backlash here?
I suppose, but I think they're guarding against that. They've thought about that. I mean, no one's talking about impeachment, when in fact everyone is talking about impeachment, right? But none of the Congress people are talking. So they're showing just
some of the new kids on the block are.
Sure, but Nancy Pelosi isn't. The leadership isn't. And what they're putting forward with gun legislation, they're not just focusing on how do we get Donald Trump.
Can we change gears totally? One of the things I think is really unfortunate, but I understand that about the content of yesterday's hearing because of the potential criminal issues and that sort of thing. There were some really serious allegations made about race by Micheal Cohen about this president, to add on to what we already know, and I think a response from the head of the Freedom Caucus, Mark Meadows, which I thought was just astonishingly, at best tone deaf, if not worse, as not racist. First, here's Micheal Cohen, part of his testimony on the President of the United States, his former client, on race, and then a little bit of what Meadows had to say. Here it is.
Mr. Trump is a racist. He told me that black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid.
You made some very demeaning comments about the president that Ms. Patton doesn't agree with. She says that as a daughter of a man born in Birmingham, Alabama, that there is no way that she would work for an individual who was racist.
We don't have time for this, but Congresswoman Pressley, I thought, and Tlaib answered this brilliantly. But not only did Micheal Cohen say that what we just heard, black people would never vote for him because they were too stupid, he goes on to say the President of the United States allegedly said to him that, can you name a country run by a black, this is while Barack Obama was president, by the way, that is not an S-hole. I think people know what the whole word is. Now, if these were isolated things, I think you might say, well, Cohen's out to get him. This fits a pattern that we've heard about with this. It's alarming. Is it not, or no?
Yeah, I mean, but we've known this, right? I mean, I don't think that this is something that most people didn't know.
But isn't it horrible that that's what we're saying? That's what we said last night.
Yeah.
It's almost like dismissing serious charges of racism against the president because, and I said the same thing you did, well, we knew already he's a racist, so what new do we learn except a couple of more examples?
Jim, I'm going to go back to 2016, in October of 2016, when the Entertainment Tonight video came out, and he was talking about women. There's the same issue on both ends, whether it's sexism or racism. It is a very big problem. This man was still elected, regardless of what he had said then. He was still elected, regardless of the fact that he said, was saying white nationalists were nice people. I don't think that changes who would vote for him ultimately.
Does it change? I said on the radio today, that's really the question to me. I said to Marjorie Egan on the radio today, Marjorie, can you imagine one person who changed their mind about Donald Trump because of this testimony? And amazingly, the first caller was somebody who voted for Trump. She's flipped. Her husband has not. He voted for Trump, too. But isn't Jennifer right? The bulk of this stuff falls on deaf ears in this country.
Yeah, I think she's right, unfortunately. But so long as Republicans are going to continue to defend the president, including yourself, Jennifer.
I don't
she's
defend
not much
him.
of a defender of the president.
Well, you defended his policies. And a lot of people say, look, I hold my nose so I can get the Supreme Court decisions, so that I can get this gun legislation vetoed and all these other things. But good people have to stand up, whether they're Republican or not, and say that we can't accept this. I mean, for what he said and what he's said against women and against and supporting white nationalists, and what he's now said about African American people clearly, and we can imagine he has. I don't understand how anyone can turn around and vote for this guy.
We got to go. Mike Ross, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Jennifer, thank you
Good
so
seeing you.
much. Appreciate your time.